I planned my own 70th birthday party, and my son, my only child, took his wife to her mother's cookout instead. No call, no apology, just a photo. Let me start from the beginning. I didn't want a big fuss. I wasn't asking for a surprise party or a rented hall with balloons everywhere. I just wanted one afternoon, mine. I figured 70 years on this earth was worth at least a shared meal. Some music, a slice of lemon cake, and my family sitting beside me, not smiling through a screen. I made the plans myself, down to the napkins. I reserved the church fellowship hall a month early. It's the same one where Marvin was baptized. The one with the folding chairs that pinch your thighs but hold 100 years of laughter. I asked Darnell from across the street to help set up. He showed up with 2 boxes of paper streamers and a Bluetooth speaker that played nothing but Sam Cooke and Motown. Perfect. I didn't invite the whole town, just a handful of folks who still remember my birthday without needing Facebook to remind them. Miss Ada brought her famous deviled eggs. Jackie and her daughter came with a pan of macaroni and cheese. Neighbors I hadn't seen in months showed up with cards and little bags tied in ribbon. Folks showed up, just not my son. Marvin and his wife Donna were the only 2 I needed to see, the only 2 I was really waiting for. I didn't even bother putting their RSVP on the guest list. I just wrote yes next to their names, because I assumed they knew about it. I sent the invite in the mail and followed up with a text. Donna liked the message, but didn't respond. Marvin sent a thumbs-up emoji 2 weeks ago. That was the last I heard. Still, I believed they'd walk through those doors. I even bought extra of that flavored sparkling water Donna likes, the kind in the green cans. Marvin doesn't care for sweets, but I still made the banana pudding he used to sneak into the fridge when he was a kid. I even had candles shaped like a 7 and a 0 sitting in the drawer next to the serving spoons, just in case he decided to surprise me with a cake song. By 2:30, most folks had arrived. The food was hot, the tables were dressed, and the music was humming soft in the background. I sat in the seat at the end of the table, the one closest to the door. Every time it creaked open, I looked up, thinking it'd be him. By 3:15, I started to get nervous. I walked outside and checked the parking lot, pretending like I needed fresh air. Donna drove a silver SUV. I didn't see it. I texted Marvin just one word, coming. No dots. No reply. By 3:30, I felt that familiar ache in my stomach, the one that shows up when you're trying not to look disappointed. I put on my best church smile and passed out paper plates, refilled tea pitchers, and kept glancing at the door like a fool. At 3:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a group text from Donna. The picture came through first. Marvin and Donna, both smiling wide, standing beside her mother's grill. Plastic chairs, soda cans, red and white checkered tablecloth. Looked like everyone had already eaten. Donna's caption read, "Nothing like family time. Happy Sunday," and a bunch of little fire emojis. That's how I found out they weren't coming. "No, sorry, Mama. No, we got caught up. No, we'll stop by after." Just a picture of them with her family. I stared at that screen for longer than I care to admit. Everyone else kept chatting, eating, catching up. But I sat there looking at my phone like it might say something different if I waited long enough. Miss Ada walked over and whispered, "You all right, baby?" I smiled and nodded. I told her Marvin was probably running late. Maybe traffic, maybe car trouble. But I knew better. I knew exactly what happened. They made a choice. My 70th birthday came around, and they picked potato salad and plastic cups in someone else's backyard. It wasn't just about missing a party. It was what it meant. I'm not just Bertha. I'm Mama. I raised Marvin, mostly by myself after his daddy died. I skipped new shoes so he could go to football camp. I worked 2 jobs and never missed a school play. I took care of Donna when she had morning sickness and couldn't keep anything down. And now, at 70 years old, I was blowing out candles beside neighbors while my only child laughed at another table in another town. I still have the little glitter crown from my 60th birthday. It's in the back of the nightstand drawer, stuck between a book of word puzzles and a bottle of expired hand lotion. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe because that day meant something. Wyatt threw that party for me. Lord, he went all out. He rented a tent, put it up in the backyard, invited every person who had ever brought me a casserole. We had a jazz trio, 2 real instruments, and everything, not some Bluetooth playlist. He even paid that teenage boy from the church to take photos. I had on a pink dress I bought from Belk, and someone brought me a sash that said, "Fabulous at 60." Marvin was there. He gave a little speech and handed me that glitter crown like I was royalty. Back then, I felt like I still mattered. That was the last big birthday. I didn't plan myself. This year, whole different feeling. As folks trickled in for my 70th, I smiled through it. I really did. I kept busy making sure folks had enough potato salad, that the tea wasn't too sweet, that the music didn't get drowned out by the chatter. I even laughed a little when Miss Ada brought up the time we ran out of forks at my retirement cookout. We made do with coffee stirrers and a whole lot of finger food. But every 5 minutes, someone leaned in and whispered, "Where's Marvin? He's coming, right?" I lied. Every time. Car trouble. Got caught in Charlotte traffic. Donna wasn't feeling great. He said they'd be late. Each one sounded worse than the last, but nobody called me on it. That's the thing about old friends. They know when to stop asking. By the time we cut the cake, my cheeks hurt from fake smiling. I blew out the candles with folks clapping, but I didn't make a wish. Not one that could come true anyway. After the last guest left, I sat in the empty hall and packed up the leftovers. There were still 3 trays of chicken wings, untouched banana pudding, and that sparkling water Marvin never came to drink. I wrapped it all in foil and put it in those big plastic containers I always reuse. I don't like wasting food, even when it's laced with disappointment. When I got home, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't even change out of my party clothes. I just sat there, legs dangling, staring at the crown from my 60th sitting quietly on the dresser. Then I opened Facebook. I didn't go looking for anything. It just popped up. One of those suggested posts you see because you're friends with somebody's cousin or neighbor. There she was, Donna, tagged in a photo at her mother's cookout. The same day, same time, big table in the yard, plastic tablecloths flapping in the wind, lawn chairs, children playing with bubbles, a big sign that said, "Family First Cookout," taped to the fence. And right there in the center of it all, Marvin, my son, laughing, holding a plate stacked with ribs and deviled eggs. I stared at that screen for a long time. They didn't even think to blur the background. There was Donna, arm around her mother, both of them beaming. There was Marvin, not looking rushed, not dressed like he came from any party. Just there, comfortable, present. Meanwhile, my plate was still in the fridge, wrapped in foil. My candles had already melted halfway before we even got to the cake. My birthday balloons deflated before sunset. That picture told me everything I needed to know. I'd been slowly disappearing from my son's life. Not overnight. Not in some dramatic fashion. Just inch by inch. Like dust gathering on a windowsill, until one day you realize the sun's not shining in the same anymore. It wasn't the missed party that hurt the most. It was the ease of it. The way they chose her cookout, like it was second nature. Like skipping my 70th birthday didn't even need discussion. I didn't cry. I sat there numb. I read every comment under the photo. So glad y'all could make it again this year. Wouldn't be the same without Marvin and Donna. Such a beautiful family. No mention of the woman who carried Marvin for 9 months. The woman who planned every birthday he ever had until he was grown. That night, I ate my birthday dinner standing at the counter. 1 wing, a scoop of macaroni, and a glass of that green can water I don't even like. I didn't bother heating anything up. It didn't seem worth it. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw the grocery list still sitting on the table. It was folded once neat, right where I left it before the party. I'd written it out in pen, front and back, on one of those legal pads I keep near the phone. Not because I needed to, I already knew most of it by heart, but because something about writing it down made it feel more real, more hopeful. I picked it up and read through it slow. Lemon cake mix, 2 boxes. Wyatt always said 1 box wasn't enough if you wanted leftovers. And I'd already planned to send Marvin home with a slice. Marvin's chips, sour cream, and onion. He used to eat those every day after school. Even now, when he visits, I always buy them. He acts like he doesn't notice, but he eats half the bag before dinner's ready. Donna's lactose-free cheese. I only started buying that after she married Marvin. I don't care for it myself, but I didn't want her to feel left out when we did the baked spaghetti. Blue napkins. Not white, not floral. Blue. It was Marvin's favorite color growing up. Every birthday, every school project, every pick-a-color moment, always blue. I sat down at the table with the list in my hands and read it like it was a letter from someone else, like a reminder of how hard I tried. It wasn't just a birthday list. It was a record of memories, a quiet way of saying, I still know what you like. I still care. That's when it hit me. I didn't plan this party just to celebrate turning 70. I planned it hoping to reconnect, to feel like I was part of something again, part of them. I didn't want gifts. I wasn't looking for candles or sweaters or gift cards. I wanted presents. I wanted them to walk in, give me a hug, sit beside me like old times, and make me feel like I hadn't just faded into the background. But that's what had happened. I faded. Little by little, year by year, I went from being their center to being their afterthought. I held the list tighter, stared down at the creases, and asked out loud, when did I become optional? It wasn't a dramatic moment. It wasn't loud, just soft and real, like saying it might help me understand. I looked around the kitchen. The good dishes were still in the rack, drying from the night before. I'd pulled out the ones with the gold trim. We used to only bring those out at Christmas. I figured 70 years of living earned at least one special meal. The balloons I'd tied to the back of the chairs were starting to droop. One had already sunk to the floor. I didn't have the heart to throw it out yet. It still said, happy, in faded gold letters. I stood up, walked to the fridge, and opened the door. There on the top shelf sat the pitcher of lemonade I made special for Marvin. Fresh squeezed, just the way he liked it. Not too sweet, with a little lemon pulp floating in the glass. I poured a glass anyway, sat it down at the place where he would have been. I didn't drink it. I just sat and looked at it. That glass told me more than any phone call ever could. It said, you tried. You thought of them. You waited. And they didn't come. I reached for the list again, read it one last time, and tucked it into the drawer with the plastic tablecloth I didn't get to use. Maybe one day I'll throw it out. Maybe not. Right now, it felt like proof I wasn't crazy for hoping. So let me ask you, if you've ever tried to make something special for people who didn't show up, you know how this feels. Subscribe, or tell me I'm wrong. The Wednesday after my birthday, I was putting fresh towels in the hallway closet when I saw it, that old metal lockbox sitting on the top shelf right where Wyatt left it years ago. I dusted around it, moved it once when we painted, but I never opened it. There was a small tag tied to the handle, W.I. Wyatt Young. My husband. He always labeled things like he worked at a post office. For some reason, that day I decided to pull it down. I carried it to the kitchen table and stared at it for a while. The latch was stiff but still worked. No lock, just a tight click as it opened. Inside were a few folded papers, a small manila envelope, and a note on yellow legal pad paper in Wyatt's handwriting. I recognized the way he dotted his I's. Small circles. He never grew out of that habit. The note said, "Bertha, if you're reading this, something must have changed. I hope I'm wrong. But if I'm not, this is just in case you're ever on your own. Look inside the envelope. Love you. Always." I sat real still for a minute. I folded the note, placed it aside, and picked up the envelope. It held two things, a key and a property deed. The deed had my name on it, just mine. I read it twice, then a third time. It was a small, one-bedroom cabin near the Broad River, about 35 minutes away, past the peach orchards, and off a quiet gravel road near a town called Lockwood Springs. Wyatt had signed the purchase papers 11 years ago. No co-owner, no mortgage, paid in full. I never knew about it. He never mentioned it. We had no family out that way, no ties to the area at all. But the next paper explained why. It was another note. "This place is yours. I didn't tell you because I hoped you'd never need it. But I saw the way things were heading. Just in case Marvin ever forgets how to show up. I hope he doesn't." I leaned back in my chair and let that sit. Wyatt was a quiet man, not the type to talk about feelings. But he paid attention. He saw things before I did. He always said Marvin was a good son, but sometimes too pulled in by people who weren't raised the same way. He said Donna was polite, but cold. I told him not to be so hard on her. She just had a different kind of upbringing. But now, holding that key, I started to wonder if I'd been wrong to brush him off. Wyatt saw it, long before I did. I remembered one Sunday after dinner, a couple years before he passed. Marvin had canceled last minute again. Wyatt was quiet all evening. When I asked what was wrong, he just said, "Don't wait too long for people who don't value your time." I thought he was just in a mood. Now, I think that was his way of warning me. He didn't fight with Marvin. He never raised his voice. But he had a way of preparing for storms before the clouds even showed up. And this cabin, that was his umbrella. I got up from the table and held the key in my palm. Small, brass, cool to the touch. There was a tiny tag attached with the number 12 written on it in permanent marker. I sat back down and reread both notes again. Slowly. Wyatt didn't leave behind a lecture. He left a plan. It wasn't about money or property. It was about dignity, about not having to beg for attention or sit in silence, waiting on people who treat your life like an optional event. He gave me something nobody else did that week. A sense that I mattered. A sense that if things got too quiet in this house, too lonely, I'd have somewhere to go that didn't come with guilt or pity. I folded the papers neatly and placed them back inside. I left the key out, and as I stood in that kitchen with the light coming in through the window, I whispered to myself, "You saw it, didn't you, Wyatt? You saw exactly how this would go." That Saturday, I packed a small bag and hit the road. Didn't tell anybody, not even Miss Ada. Just scribbled a note for the neighbor to watch the house and took off. I typed the address into the GPS and followed it out past the edge of town, past the fields, the hardware store with the wooden rooster sign, and a stretch of road I didn't recognize. It was quiet out there. Fewer street lights, more mailboxes on wooden posts, no traffic. The kind of place you only end up if you mean to, When the directions finally said, "You've arrived," I almost missed the driveway. It was gravel, narrow, just wide enough for one car. I pulled in slow, rolled the windows down, and let the breeze in. It smelled like pine, and something else I couldn't quite name. Clean. Still, the cabin sat just beyond the bend. It wasn't big. One story. White siding. Navy blue shutters faded from the sun. A porch with 2 rocking chairs and a wind chime that was missing one piece. But it looked cared for. Not abandoned. Like someone had been by recently just to sweep off the leaves. I parked and sat in the car for a minute, staring at it. Then I got out and walked up the steps. The key fit perfectly. Door opened without a creak. Inside was just as simple. A couch, a little rug, a table with 2 chairs. The kind of place meant for resting, not impressing. The air smelled faintly of cedar, and the kind of floor polish Wyatt always used. The man kept everything clean, even things no one else saw. The fridge was empty but plugged in. There was a sticky note on the front. "It's yours now. You never needed permission." I reached out and touched the paper like it might disappear. His handwriting again. Small, slanted, neat. He must have left it there years ago, just in case. I walked through the cabin. The bedroom had a simple quilt on the bed. Same pattern as the one we used to have in the guest room back home. On the dresser sat an old radio, still plugged in, still working. I turned the knob, and it clicked on without effort. Static gave way to a soft gospel tune, the kind Wyatt liked to hum along to on Sunday mornings. There were books on the shelf, mostly westerns and gardening guides. I smiled at the mix. That was Wyatt. Grit and greens. I opened the back door and stepped into the yard. It wasn't much, just grass and a few trees. But near the fence, I saw a small wooden sign staked into the ground. Looked handmade, weathered from rain. It said, "Bertha's Garden." The dirt was bare, nothing growing, but the soil looked turned, like someone had prepped it long ago, thinking flowers might come. That's when it hit me. He didn't just buy a property. He built a place with me in mind. Not for retirement, not for show, but for peace, for after, for whenever I needed to remember who I was before everything got so complicated. I sat on the edge of the porch, looked out at that empty patch of earth, and I cried. Not the kind of crying you hide, not the kind you cover with a tissue and a forced smile. Just quiet, grateful tears. Not because I was sad, but because I felt seen. That little sign in the ground said more than Marvin had said in months. It said, "You still have a place, even if nobody else makes room." I stayed for hours, made tea on the stove, sat in the rocker, listened to the trees move, watched the sky shift from blue to gold. I didn't think about Marvin. I didn't think about Donna. I didn't need to. I wasn't angry, just calm. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting on someone. I didn't call Marvin. I didn't send a text. I didn't ask if they were free next weekend or if they wanted to stop by. I just breathed, on my own, without needing permission to exist. A week after I came back from the cabin, I heard a knock at the door. It was a Thursday, late afternoon. I was folding laundry, halfway through watching an old episode of The Golden Girls. I peeked out the front window, and there it was, Marvin's car. He hadn't called. No text. Just showed up. Donna was in the passenger seat, looking down at her phone, not even pretending to come to the door. She didn't glance toward the house. Just sat there like it wasn't her concern. I opened the door slowly. "Hey, Mama," Marvin said. He had that smile people wear when they're trying to play nice but don't want to be there. He stood on the porch with his hands in his pockets like a teenager caught skipping school. "I was in the neighborhood," he said. "Thought I'd stop by." I nodded, but didn't say much. He cleared his throat. Donna's out in the car. She's got a thing later. I didn't ask. I've been meaning to talk to you, he said, just checking in, seeing how you've been since your birthday. I leaned on the doorframe. You know how I've been, I said. You saw the pictures. You just weren't in any of them. He looked down at his shoes like they'd say something helpful. We were going to come, he said, but Donna's mom had this thing and it overlapped, and you know how it is? I didn't answer. He shifted. Anyway, that's not why I came today. I wanted to talk about some paperwork. I've been thinking, you're getting older, and it might be smart to get things organized, like your accounts, the bills, the house. I raised an eyebrow. Organized for who? He blinked. Well, for you, but also so things don't get messy later. Just trying to help. Whose idea was this? I asked. Yours or Donna's? He paused too long. I just think we should get ahead of things, he said. You know, before anything happens. Anything like what? I asked. He looked past me into the house, like he was expecting a mess or a problem to jump out and prove him right. Everything's fine here, I said. You're the one knocking. I know. I just figured maybe I could help take some of the load off. Dad used to handle the finances, right? I could help sort some stuff. Make a plan. I didn't move. I already have a plan. He blinked. You do? Yep. Wyatt left a few things in order. You ever hear of Broad River? I asked. He froze. Cabin out that way. I said, 1 bedroom. My name's on the deed. He bought it over a decade ago. Quiet place. Has a garden patch with my name on it. Marvin didn't speak. I stepped out a little onto the porch. Also found a note in his handwriting. Told me it was mine in case you ever stopped showing up. He tried to recover. Mama, it's not like that. It is exactly like that, I said. You didn't come to my birthday. You didn't call. You didn't even ask if I was okay. And now you're on my porch talking about paperwork and getting ahead of things. That's not love, Marvin. That's management. He opened his mouth, but said nothing. I'm not confused, I said. I'm not sick, and I don't need help sorting my life so somebody else can feel in control of it. I didn't mean it like that, he said. Then what did you mean? I asked, because from where I'm standing, it sounds a lot like you came to make sure I wasn't spending or signing anything without you knowing about it. He looked away. Donna still hadn't stepped out of the car. I'm not looking for control, I told him. I'm reclaiming the space you stopped showing up for. I waited long enough. You missed the moment. Don't come now because you're afraid of what I might know. His shoulders sank. Mama, I'm sorry. I nodded. I know, but sorry doesn't fix silence. I didn't yell, didn't slam the door, just stepped back inside and gently pulled it shut. And that was that. I stood there behind the door, listening to the gravel under his tires as the car pulled away. That Sunday, I skipped my usual spot in the back pew and walked straight to the front office of the church. Miss Ada was there like she always is, organizing envelopes and fussing with the copier that never works right. She looked up from her stack of bulletins and said, Bertha, you all right? Not in the casual way people ask. She meant it. I didn't waste time. I need your help, I said. Miss Ada and I have known each other close to 40 years. We used to teach Sunday school together. She's got a sharp tongue and a sharper memory. If anybody in town knows where to go or who to talk to, it's her. I told her everything. The birthday, the cabin, the papers Wyatt left, Marvin's little visit, and the feeling I couldn't shake, like something else was coming. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded once and said, You're not wrong. I've heard Donna's been asking questions. About what? I asked. About you. Legal stuff. Real estate. There's been whispering. One of the girls in her cousin's Bible study said Donna mentioned getting things in order with your name attached. I felt my chest tighten. What kind of things? Power of attorney, access to accounts, maybe trying to position you as fragile. I swallowed hard. I knew something was off when Marvin showed up talking about paperwork, but hearing it from Ada made it real. She didn't waste time either. Pulled out a manila folder from her drawer and said, "We're going to fix this today." We drove straight to her friend's notary office after service. The woman was older than us, but sharp as ever, wore cat-eye glasses and red lipstick like it was still 1963. I liked her immediately. We updated everything. I filed new estate documents, clean and clear. I wrote in bold print that no financial authority was to be granted to Marvin or Donna. Not now. Not ever. I designated Miss Ada as my healthcare contact. She grinned and said, "If you end up in a hospital, I'll make sure they feed you real food, and not those pudding cups." We signed, dated, stamped. It was done. Later that afternoon, I sat in the fellowship hall with Ada, drinking sweet tea, and watching the younger folks stack folding chairs. She looked at me and said, "Protecting yourself doesn't mean you stopped loving them." I nodded. It means I started loving myself again. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like a boundary, like putting a fence around a part of me I'd let get trampled for too long. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I wasn't even angry at that point. I was tired of being caught off guard, tired of having to guess people's intentions. So I made it plain. If you want to be part of my life, come through the front door. Don't circle the house, and try the windows. I walked home with my bag full of papers and my heart a little lighter. I knew they might be upset when they found out, maybe even insulted, but I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing it so I could finally stop hurting myself. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I went back to the cabin. I needed quiet. After the church meeting and the paperwork, I just wanted air. Not questions, not plans, just a quiet place where I didn't have to be on. I brought a basket of groceries, a clean set of sheets, and a mind full of thoughts I hadn't sorted yet. The minute I stepped inside, I felt like I could breathe again, like the walls weren't waiting on me to explain myself. I dropped the bags on the table and noticed a small cardboard box tucked under the corner of the bed. I don't know why I hadn't seen it the first time. Maybe I just wasn't ready. It was labeled in Wyatt's handwriting, "Tools plus extras." Inside were a few old screwdrivers, an extra flashlight, some batteries, a roll of duct tape, and underneath it all, an old voice recorder. I picked it up. It was one of those little tape ones with a side button you had to press hard, the kind you'd see at an office desk 30 years ago. Wyatt used to carry it in his truck to take notes about jobs he was working on. I didn't expect anything to be on it. I pressed play anyway. It clicked, and then I heard him. Wyatt. His voice. Soft. Slower than I remembered. He must have recorded it not long before he passed. There was a little static at first. Then he spoke. "If you're hearing this, I guess I didn't get to say these things in person. I'm not one for long speeches, so I'll try to keep it simple." I froze. "Bertha, I love you. Always did. You were the steady in my mess, the soft that held up my hard edges. I hope you never forget that." I sat down at the table without even realizing it. I know how things have felt with Marvin. I hoped it'd shift. I hoped he'd see you the way I always have. But if he doesn't, that ain't on you. That's on him. You did everything right. You gave and you waited. And if he can't show up for your 70th, if he can't sit at your table when you need him most, that's not your failure. I felt tears in my eyes, but I didn't wipe them. I just listened. I built that cabin because I knew one day you might need a place that's just yours. A place where nobody takes up space you didn't offer. You earned peace. Bertha, you don't need to keep asking for it. There was a pause, then a breath. And one more thing. Don't you ever let them forget who you are. The tape clicked off. I sat there for a long time. Then I pressed rewind. Listened again. Same voice. Same words. Like he was right there in the room with me, pulling out a chair, pouring sweet tea, and settling in to say what needed saying. After the second time, I pressed stop and set the recorder down gently. I whispered out loud, I won't. I meant it. Not because I needed to prove something, but because I finally felt sure of myself again. His words didn't fix everything, but they reminded me of who I was before I got so caught up in being easy to deal with. He saw me. Even after he was gone, he found a way to remind me. It wasn't a grand gesture. No flowers or dramatic letters. Just his voice, in a quiet room, saying what no one else had said in a long time. 1 year later, I celebrated my 71st birthday at the cabin. No sign-up sheets. No RSVP lists. No sparkling water nobody drinks. Just a good, full morning with people who wanted to be there. I called it brunch, but nobody stood on ceremony. I told folks to come as they were, and they did. Ada brought 2 of her cornbread pies, still warm. My neighbor Rosa brought a pitcher of sweet tea that was more sugar than water. That little boy from down the road, Caleb, he showed up with his grandma and 2 bags of store-bought cupcakes, proud as anything. The ladies from the quilting group all brought something. Plastic containers rattled with deviled eggs and sausage balls. We ate off paper plates and used folding chairs pulled up to the porch. I didn't stress over centerpieces. I tied 3 balloons to the mailbox, and that was enough. Somebody knocked over the fruit tray. We laughed and rinsed it off anyway. Somebody left the screen door cracked, and flies got in. We waved him away and kept talking. It was noisy, cheerful, and nothing like last year. And it was exactly what I needed. We took a group photo, with everyone holding their plates. Ada stood behind me with both hands on my shoulders, grinning wide. I didn't wear a crown this year, but I didn't need one. The look in their eyes told me I was still seen, still valued. Later that afternoon, once the crowd thinned and the sun started dipping low, I walked out to check the mail. Mostly junk and circulars, but wedged between a church flyer and a hardware store coupon was a small cream envelope. No return address. I knew the handwriting before I even opened it. Marvin. Inside was a card. Simple print. Nothing fancy. Happy 71st, Mom. Hope you're well. No phone number. No signature beyond his name. No mention of last year. No apology. Just a birthday card. I read it once. Then I slipped it into the drawer in the kitchen next to the measuring spoons. Not because I was angry. Not anymore. I just didn't need to carry it with me. He remembered. Maybe Donna made him send it. Maybe not. But it didn't matter. I didn't build this new celebration around him. I built it around what was still alive in me. After the dishes were cleared and the porch swept, I stood out there with my hands resting on the rail. The wind rustled the trees gently. The flower bed, Bertha's garden, had daisies in bloom and little patches of marigolds poking through. I looked out at the yard, still scattered with cupcake wrappers and laughter echoing in the air, and whispered to myself, I didn't need them to show up. I needed to stop waiting. That's the truth of it. I kept making room for people who already made up their mind to sit somewhere else. And when I finally stopped hoping for a knock that wasn't coming, I heard other voices, real ones, present ones, people who weren't looking for what I could give, but came just because they cared. So let me ask you something. If someone forgets your birthday, do you still set the table for them next year? Subscribe if you've ever had to make that choice. And if you haven't, comment. I want to know why. And while you're here, go ahead and like, share, and hit that little bell so you don't miss the next story. Because sometimes the stories we need most aren't about who showed up, but about who stopped waiting.